皆さんこんにちは。Welcome back to my channel. Today, we are diving into one of the most commonly confusing topics for Japanese learners. What's the difference between お願いします and ください? Both translates to please, but they are used in different ways, depending on the situation. Let's break it down with example to make it clear. Are you ready? Let's get started. First, let's look at ください. It's used when you are requesting something for yourself. It implies a direct request like give me. ください is typically used when requesting tangible object like coffee, book, or an iPad. For example, when ordering at cafe, you might say コーヒーをください。コーヒーをください。Just state what you want and add を before ください。コーヒーをください。コーヒーをください。Now let's compare it with お願いします。It's also used for making requests, but there is slight difference. The word お願い means wish, so it implies a humble way to request something. It generally feels more formal and respectful. For example, コーヒーをお願いします。コーヒーをお願いします。Just like ください. State what you want and add を before お願いします。コーヒーをお願いします。コーヒーをお願いします。By the way, in everyday conversation, people often drop を like コーヒーお願いします。コーヒーください。Both are perfectly fine in everyday conversation. Here is another example. If you are at a convenience store and need a shopping bag, you can say レジ袋を1枚ください。レジ袋を1枚ください。If you want to sound a little more polite, you can say レジ袋を1枚お願いします。レジ袋を1枚お願いします。Now let's talk about situations where only お願いします works. For example, if you are making a request to speak to someone on the phone, you would say 山田さんをお願いします。山田さんをお願いします。If you said 山田さんをください, it would sound like you are asking to physically take Yamada-san with you, which would be both confusing and weird, so avoid using ください in this case. お願いします is also used when requesting non-tangible things like actions or services. Let's look at some examples. When asking for services at a restaurant, you can say 注文をお願いします。注文をお願いします。お会計をお願いします。お会計をお願いします。Another example. When taking a taxi to Narita Airport, you'd say to the driver like 成田空港までお願いします。成田空港までお願いします。In this case, 成田空港まで implies 成田空港まで 運転をしてもらう which means you are requesting the service of being driven to the airport. That way, お願いします is the correct choice. And when asking for a cooperation, you might say, ご協力をお願いします。ご協力をお願いします。Probably you would hear and see this phrase everywhere in Japan. Now let's talk about situations where you can only use ください. ください is specifically used when politely asking someone to do something for yourself. Also used in polite commands. Here's how it works. You take the verb in its Te-Form like 話して、聞いて、書いて and add ください at the end. For example, if you want to ask someone to speak more slowly, you can say もう少しゆっくり話してください。もう少しゆっくり話してください。In this case, take the verb 話す which means to speak, and change it to Te-Form, which is 話して and add ください at the end. 話してください。話してください。If you said もう少しゆっくり話してお願いします。It would be incorrect because the verb Te-Form must always be followed by ください。Here is another example. 東京駅までの行き方を教えてください。東京駅までの行き方を教えてください。Here are some examples of polite commands. 電車に乗ってください。電車に乗ってください。静かにしてください。静かにしてください。ください is also used in polite instructions. To use it, take the must form of a verb like 待ちます、話します、書きます、drop ます、add o before the verb, and finish with ください。For example, 少々お待ちください。少々お待ちください。In this case, take the verb 待ちます which means to wait and drop ます and add o before 待ち. Finally, finish with ください to complete the phrase. お待ちください。お待ちください。Another example. こちらにおかけください。こちらにおかけください。That's it for today's lesson. I hope this clears up any confusion about ください and お願いします。If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for the next video. I love to hear your thoughts. Please leave comments down below and let me know what would you like to see in my future videos. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for upcoming videos. ではまた。